more of a time for us to have a conversation together based on the art I'm going to show you. So right now I am going to steal the screen from you. You guys should have the screen up. If anyone doesn't have the screen up, yell because I see it. By the way, I only see 4 of you at any given time. So if you try to get my attention by raising your hand with your real hand, there's a good chance I won't see you, which is why we use the icon, or if you're desperate, just scream. What you're going to look at for the next hour is 1 week, or almost 1 week, of a 10-week program I've done a number of times in different locations, including Regis. You can see it's called Great Themes of Great Art. Each week, I showed the class 10 artworks from about 1500 to today that are on one theme. So for example, one of the themes is spirituality, one is daily life, one is violence, one is looking inside, which is like emotion. And now today we're going to look outside because Naomi tells me that many of you enjoy painting landscapes, and that's pretty much what this is about. You're going to see 6, possibly 7 artworks in the next hour. Not more than that, because we're going to talk together, and that's going to take a little time. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's have a good time together. I'm going to start you off with one of the great artworks of the Middle Ages. Hunters in the Snow by Peter Brugel the Elder, painted in 1565. I know some of you are familiar with it, but hopefully you will get to hear about it in different ways in the next hour. By the way, this is the most popular image ever on a Christmas card. Not that that should make us feel that it's a great painting. It's a great painting for many other reasons. It's done in oil on wood. Even at a time when canvas existed, Brugel preferred wood, and it was commissioned, not by the church. You can tell the scene would not be a scene the church would care much about. It was commissioned by a Flemish banker. Now, I'm going to show you a few tight shots before I say much more and we begin to talk. So this, actually not a tight shot, is of the same series. So Brugel did 6 artworks, and this was common at the time, in a series called Labors of the Month. So each of the 6, showing 6 different times of the year, 2 months each, show labor at that time of year. And this, of course, would be summer or possibly early fall. Now note here, as here, Brugel is standing, if you will, in the same spot to paint. It's the so-called balcony view, back and up at about a 45-degree angle. We see much more, but we also have a little bit of a struggle as a painter to show depth, because the higher we go, depth becomes more difficult. So here it is again. Now let's look at the details. On the right first, you're seeing the inn. I'll come back so you can locate the inn on the left side. Now, the inn here seems to have a couple of folks preparing food, building a fire, etc. But what the key is up above the sign. The sign says it is the Inn of Saint Eustache. Saint Eustache was, prior to becoming a saint, a young hunter who would go out and hunt deer. One day he's hunting deer. He sees an image of a cross between 2 antlers. Then soon enough sees an image of what he believes is God. He then devotes himself to the church and becomes Saint Eustache. The name, which is impossible for us to read clearly, but we see the image there on the sign, is the Inn of Saint Eustache. This makes sense because these are hunters on the left, and of course he was a deer hunter. Now on the left, we see the difficult time that the hunters have had in the winter. Look at all that they have to show for their time away from home. Right there, difficult to see, but it is a fox. You see the leg sticking up. That's it. They caught or trapped or killed a fox. Now, further down in the painting, I'm going to show you the painting again. There it is. Further down, left side, we see these gorgeous birds, but more to the point, we clearly understand the weather now. in the background. It has snowed, probably recently. We've got a gray day, and he's using these gorgeous pale greens to give us a sky. On the right side, look at activity. The Dutch, of course, loved this. They wanted to show us daily life. We've got a woman at top carrying kindling and someone in a makeshift toboggan at bottom. And then finally, before we go back to our full view, people doing everything from skating to chasing each other on the ice below. Now, as you look here, once again, look at the top right corner. We're in the Netherlands, guys. The Alps don't exist in the Netherlands. What he has done, as the Dutch often did at this time, is fabricate. He's given us the Alps or the Pyrenees, but in Holland. And they did it often, Dutch painters, with religious scenes. They would throw in someone who clearly looked contemporary when it should have looked 500 years older. And our friend here has done it without ever having seen the Pyrenees, undoubtedly, but he has done it for some drama. Now, I'm going to start, guys, by asking you a couple of questions. And again, throw your hand up if you have a thought. Every thought is a good thought here, guys. We're not going to have any rights or wrongs to our ideas. Let's have a conversation. First thing I want to ask you is, what is the color temperature here? In other words, you guys paint with color, obviously. You must consider what color does to your work. Here, what temperature has Bruegel evoked with this painting? And you might say more than one. Any thoughts? Throw your hand up and I should be able to see you when you do. Go ahead. I think I've got Laura or Laurie. I can't quite see, but there we go. Lauren, sorry, Lauren. What do you think? Make sure you unmute yourself.
Yeah, both Laura and Lauren.
I see warm over by the fire, and
Yep.
the houses are warm. And then I see cool tones by the ice and the snow and the sky.
Great. So Lauren sees two different temperatures. Anyone else have a thought? It's going to be hard to stray from Lauren's idea. I think most of us probably agree. Left side, interestingly enough, very warm. Virtually everything that we could say is a warm color is on the left. Virtually everything that's a cool color is on the right. And this also points out something else about this artwork. There is no easy focus in the logical place. If you feel there's a focus, for you anyway, it must be to the left. Yet eventually our eyes are going to move. Before I ask you the next question, I want Mark to pipe in. Go ahead, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure can.
Well, I look at it too as it's predominantly yellow, right down to the yellow lab or the yellow hunting dog, and the cool of the blue. So you have the strange dichotomy of opposites.
Great. Opposite ends of the color wheel, I'm sure, is what you're driving at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I think I've got Laura waving her hands. Laura, go ahead and unmute yourself. What do you have to say?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, having to do with the perspective and the fact that you said there's not a real one focus, I see the large tree on the left going to a thinner tree further away. Thinner tree looks thinner, but it's further away. And the birds up in the center sky are flying down, or at least that one big one. So I see a focus going from the left to the right, and I would feel that the artist wants us to appreciate those skaters down on the ice below.
Okay, so Laura's just jumped the gun. Good job, Laura. You've beaten me to the punch. My next question was going to be this one, and you could have answered it as well. How is he moving our eyes? I think Laura's given us one clear way, following the diagonal line of the trees right down to the pond. There may be other ways that he's having us move our eyes, other techniques, other elements here. Anyone see anything that helps move your eyes?
Hi, I'll just
Go ahead, Barbara. Good. Go ahead.
Well, the angle of all the hills just brings you right into the skating rink.
Fantastic. So if we go to the background, we've got the hills actually, and in the middle ground, we've got the houses as well. They bring us down, and you might even argue that the hills on the right side or the mountains do the same thing. And now that we talk about these houses and those mountains, one reason you may have put the mountains here is look at how he's framed the painting for us. Mountains on the right, building down in the lower right corner, buildings on the left side. Anyone else on how your eyes move in this painting? Okay, you may have covered just about everything, guys. I've got one more question for you. As we look at the painting, we can't help but immediately say it's a wonderful painting of daily life, kind of like a Vermeer. But there's a little bit more here to it. Bruegel was famous for underlying messages. And there is a message here. It's nothing terribly sophisticated, by the way, but does anyone want to make a stab at what Bruegel's message might be?
Life is hard.
Life is hard. Great. And tell me what you see here that suggests that life is hard, Nan.
It's cold, it's winter. They're in the snow, it's up above their ankles. There are people down on the ice. You look out as far as you can see and it's still cold. Right up to those mountains.
It's chilling us to the bone even as we look at it. Life is hard. Cindy.
I see two different classes of people, the workers and the people who have leisure time.
Aha, so maybe the people down below are largely those of a middle or upper middle class.
Right.
They've got time on their hands. Great. Anything more, guys, about an underlying message here? I'm going to help you with one final thought. I think the two messages that you guys have delineated are right on mark. There's a subtle nuance to the whole thing. And that is that no matter how hard man, humankind, fights, they can't change what he hath wrought, the seasons. We will not beat the weather. We may only get one fox on our hunt. And when we come back, as one of you just said, it could still be cold as blazes. Bruegel did this work about the middle of the Middle Ages. He was, as many of you know, one of the great artists to depict detail in his work. I'm going to go back just briefly before we say goodbye to this. Let me get my mouse here. Hang on. Because the details here are just gorgeous. Everything he's done with the, look at the trees. If you've got a big enough screen, you can just picture him with the magnifying glass and the brush that had 3 horsehairs on it, trying to paint those trees. And all those people down below, wealthy or otherwise, are equally fascinating. Any last thoughts before we move on, guys? Nice analysis.
Why is there this rectangle of white down here just above the witch hazel? It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the picture, yet there are trees and there's that weird edge.
Is it this?
Yeah, down there.
You don't think it's a roof, but just a roof that is so visually misshapen by the trees that it doesn't look like a roof?
I suppose, yes, when you look at it that way. Gotcha.
I think that's got to
There's
be
the
it.
chimney to the
Ah,
right.
yes, good point. Someone's got good eyes. There's a chimney on the far
Yep.
right corner, so that's a giveaway. Yeah, I don't think he was going to mess with abstraction in this painting. Good job, guys. Let's have a treat. I say it's a treat because this is one of the only known landscapes painted by Johannes Vermeer. Not even a handful, 2, maybe 3 of the 35 known works. And this one's done 100 years after Bruegel's work, The View of Delft. Now, we're looking at a constructed scene once again. Now, only in part was the past scene constructed, but here, much of it is. We do see some buildings that are real, other buildings that may have been in other parts of the town, and others that he constructed out of whole cloth, so to speak. So what we're looking at across a quay, the peninsula in front, is a tower in the rear. You see it lit. That is the Neue Kirche, or the new church. It had just been built recently. And the reason was that much of the town had blown up and burned to the ground. So within decades of this painting, that occurred, and he is now showing things that by and large should look spanking new. They don't all. On the far right side, we see the Rotterdam Gate. Now that's where those 2 boats are, and you see the arch. That's the Rotterdam Gate. And in the middle, you see another arch with a bit of a spire up above it. That is the Schiedam Gate, because we're looking at the river Schie, S-C-H, in front. We don't know what here, other than the Neue Kirk, is constructed, but really, do we care? It's just gorgeous. Now, I'm going to not have any details for you in just a minute, because there's a fun technique that he used to help him create this work, or at least we think so. I want to start off with a couple of questions. First of all, what time of day is it, guys? You can look for clues, and I understand it could be two different times of the day because it may look very similar, but anyone want to posit what time of day it is? For those of you who have the eyes of a 12-year-old, there is a clock on top of the Schiedam Gate right up here. I can't read it, but I do know what it says. Anyone want to make a guess as to what time of day it is? It's not obvious because the shadows are very small. We see very few. There's not much to give shadow.
How about high noon?
How about high noon? That's what I would have said if I didn't know better, Laura. Anyone else?
Me.
The lighting does look kind of even, right? Victoria? No, I'm sorry, it's not Victoria. Anyone else?
I would say
Barbara.
it's either, I would say late afternoon because of the light to the very right side and the face of the buildings going in and in the middle way in the back. It's very directed like a late afternoon light.
Good eyes, Barbara. So you could have been correct, except we have two different possibilities during the day. It could
Okay,
either be
more
late afternoon, right? Or very early morning. Believe it or not, guys, these folks are up early. This is 7 a.m. If we could read the clock, and I can vaguely see the hands, it is in fact 7 a.m. So we've got this beautiful low light on the steeple of the Neue Kirk in the background. And of course, the very even light on the figures in the front because it's so low in the sky right now. Now, here, I think he is adding a lot of sky to a painting that is all about the town. What does the inclusion of so much sky do for this artwork? For you, or if you think in general? And if you want to say, I want to get rid of some of that sky, bring the town up in the painting, that's good too. Whatever you think. Go ahead, Laura.
How about location? We know that in Holland, they have a lot of clouds. They have gray skies often. These are very blue skies, but what about the shadows? Are they telling us something, those shadows in the water?
Don't know if the shadows are, but your thought about the sky might be an indicator of something uniquely Netherlandish, if you will. Anyone else on the sky? Think of it from a balance, composition standpoint. Think of what you might have done if you were painting the scene. You might have done it totally differently. Guys, I can tell you one thing, that we don't have a rule of thirds here, and I know a lot of you know what the rule of thirds is, but we certainly have a 1/3, 2/3 split in proportion here. In other words, the lower town level is 1/3, the upper is 2/3. We love things in threes, which is one reason why we love the rule of thirds. I think what it's doing is it's actually making the town more important rather than less important. And whether you like the sky or not, it seems to have a wonderful, wonderful feel. And obviously it adds light and shadow to what's underneath it. So I'm going to ask you one more thing about this painting. You guys know your elements of art: line, color, shape, space, value. And then we can go into things like the principles of organizational design: balance, composition, weight, rhythm, harmony, etc. Is there any element of art or principle of design that strikes you here? How is Delft, how is Vermeer giving us a treat for the eyes? Is he using shape? Is he using line? Is he using color, texture, composition? I think he's doing many things, but anything that you can think of, things that you might think of as you paint, what has he done?
I think he's using a limited palette and a really nice kind of rhythmic, the shapes were kind of repeating themselves and the colors interspersing with each other. And for a picture that just shows a, you know, kind of motionless town, it has a lot of rhythm in it.
I love your word rhythm. One of the things he's done is use color to create rhythm, and you said also shape as well. You also use the word repetition, and we're going to see repetition bouncing over the painting from left to right, or if you prefer, from right to left. Look at his gray blue. It's like music. Bing, bong, bing, bong, bing, bong, bing, bong, bong, bing, bong. He dances across the entire width of the painting with that blue. You could say the same about the red, but there are larger swaths of red. The shapes too repeat themselves. Remember, he constructed the scene, and you might at first say, well, of course, buildings have similar shapes, but he has chosen these to give us what Barbara said was shapes that are repeating as well. Anything else besides shape and color, or any other ideas about either shape or color that you see here, guys? What's he thinking about? Go ahead, Lauren.
I see a lot of texture. I see this sandy soil as a texture, the water as a texture, smooth glass. I see the rock stone as a texture, and then the airy sky as a texture.
Fantastic, and I'm going to show you texture that you can't quite see right now. You'd need a magnifying glass on top of everything that Lauren has told us. I mean, look at the background as well as the foreground. The sand is this beautiful, smooth texture, the water smooth enough, but look at the whole background. We can almost touch those walls, those craggy stones. Anything else before I help you see texture in a different way? Anyone else? Okay, so we know that he may have cheated. And when I say cheated, I say it with a smile on my face because why not? He may have used, and probably did use, a camera obscura. Now, some of you know what a camera obscura is. I'm going to do the elementary version of it in just a second. And the reason that we believe, and we being scholars, not me, I'm just listening, is that what we're seeing here is something that is called, I'm showing you where this is coming from. Look on the right side of the painting right here, okay? We're right there. That's a detail. You're going to see it in a minute. Now look at the boats over on the far right. Now look at the boats. We see all these white dots on the boats. That's not reflection off the water. It would look different than that if it were. They are artifacts that have fooled Vermeer, and he has put them into his painting. They are called discs of confusion, and they result from using a camera obscura. Our lenses today on cameras, for example, are so good that we almost never see in the resulting photographs discs of confusion. They are little spots that do not focus properly. But when you're using a camera obscura, and there they are right there, when you're using a camera obscura, the crudest photography material ever, you're going to get them. So let's take a look. Right side, we see a darkened room. On the left wall, right here, there's a hole in the darkened room, and we've got a person standing outside. Now, what we know is that the way things are reflected in life is light hits us, let's say we're that person, it bounces off us, and the lens in our eyes gets the reflected light back, and an image is created. An image is created in our eyes upside down, just as it is in a camera obscura. But our brains flip the images. A camera obscura can't do that. So as you look at the person on the left, you see just three light rays hitting him and bouncing back toward the hole in the wall. There are, however, far more light rays, an infinite number bouncing off him, many of which are going in totally different directions, not making it through the hole. But those that just happen to go through the hole continue through to the back wall of the darkened room but create an upside down image. So his head on the outside is at his feet on the inside, and vice versa. Light rays do not twist and turn. They only move straight. The only light rays that will hit his belly and become his belly inside are the ones that are right off the middle, and you can see them going through here and hitting his belly, which is right side up in one little tiny spot. Camera obscura gives us an image on the back wall of a darkened room of whatever is outside. Now, here's what Vermeer probably did, and many other artists of the time did. He wants to paint the scene that's to the left. You see the wall in the middle separating the scene from his darkened room. You see up the top, there's a little hole with light rays coming into the room. That is, in a sense, his lens. But he doesn't want them to be upside down on the wall. That is the image. He uses a mirror up here at 45 degrees. The light rays bounce and flip because they're hitting the mirror, go through a homemade lens, which is probably nothing more than a tube in those days, and come down here onto his canvas. So he's seeing the image on the canvas, not on the back wall. All the better to cheat, because now he simply takes a pencil and outlines whatever he wants to outline from the scene. And as a result, he's going to get discs of confusion, which confuse him, and he paints them by mistake. They are, after all, hundreds of yards away across the river. And by the way, the belief is that he sat in his own bedroom on the second floor of his house, looking down on this scene. Now, coming back to our texture. So we're going to look at this little area on the left side of the painting. There it is, up close, left side of the painting. You do see some discs of confusion, but that's not what we're after. What we're after is the sand that he mixed into his paint, and there it is on the roof of the house. You see texture that is almost unbelievable, but the sand is doing a lot of the work for him. Any last thoughts about this gorgeous painting? View of Delft. I am told that if you go there today, it doesn't look anything like this. Great. Now we're going to look at a painting that a number of you have seen, maybe all of you have, but I hope we can look at it a little differently now. Katsushika Hokusai did this, 200 years ago, and it is a woodcut. And if you count, don't take your time now, you probably get about maybe 7 different blocks, 1 block for every color that he had to have used. Now, Hokusai was famous for using a style or doing a style of Japanese art, which again, some of you may be aware of. It is called ukiyo-e prints. Now, ukiyo-e simply means an image of a fleeting world. In other words, a scene of daily life. But ukiyo-e prints had a couple of other things in common. They emphasized line. You see it here, not straight lines, but you see line. They emphasized bright and pure color, which a woodblock would give you. You get solid color. And the Japanese, as I think only they can do it, distilled form to its minimum. Now, I'm looking for one word, guys. Ideally an adjective, but a noun is fine too. One word to describe this painting.
Wave.
Wave, great. No reason not to say it. We see a wave and it is obviously powerful. Nan.
Threatening.
Threatening. So is it the wave that feels threatening to you, Nan?
Yes, look at the tiny people.
Ah, great. So Nan has good eyes. Does everyone see we've got a couple of, well, they look almost like toboggans, but they're obviously something more like kayaks with people on them. Anything more than threatening and a wave or a threatening wave. And by the way, guys, look in the background. Some of you may have guessed, that is Mount Fujiyama. And this painting is one of 36, print, is one of 36 on the theme of Fujiyama that Hokusai did. Victoria, what's your word?
I think it's exciting, like a moment about to happen.
Okay, so Victoria, I'm going to put you on the spot. You said exciting. I love the word. Victoria, put yourself, you're going to have to make yourself really small here to get in the painting. Put yourself inside the painting. How do you feel in there? How do you feel in there?
Threatened.
Threatened, okay. So you're not a surfer, but you're threatened. I don't blame you. What's threatening about it? I'm going to keep asking you to talk. Go ahead. What's threatening about it, Victoria?
Feel like that wave's about to crash on the boats and the people in it.
Great.
But if I was a surfer, I suppose that's what I said. It can be exciting. I wasn't looking at it at the people's perspective.
It's got to be a 25-foot wave, right? So threatening. Any other words, guys, to describe this?
Yeah, I would say terrifying.
Great, David. Terrifying. Again, is it the wave mostly?
Yes, and the little dots of splashing coming down, and the little people on their boats underneath there being threatened.
Great. It does not look like they're going to make it, right?
No. But maybe.
Guys,
I can think of
go ahead,
tsunami.
Randa.
Tsunami.
Tsunami. Ah, interesting. So we've gone up a notch from just threatening here. Guys, look at that wave even more closely. What else do you notice about the way he has depicted the wave?
It looks aggressive,
Aggressive. What about it looks aggressive, Laura?
like claws.
There you go. You see the claws, guys? Exactly. You should feel threatened, right? Anything else about it that you could characterize it as besides claw-like and threatening? Now look at one other thing he's done here beautifully. I think some of the wonder of life is contrast. Whether it's a great movie that stops the action every once in a while for a little romance, or a great piece of music that stops the tempo and quiets it down for a while and then builds up again. Here, there is contrast in a number of ways. So on the one hand, we see this. On the other hand, we see that. Guys, where do you see contrast here? Look carefully.
Time.
Time. You said time, T-I-M-E, right?
Correct, because
Go ahead, Mark.
long term, short term, there's the impending peril of the volcano in the distance and the immediacy of the tsunami.
Oh, that's great. So you've got a little bit of threat in the background too, but it's not quite awoken up yet, right? Mount Fujiyama. But the foreground, time is brief. We may not be here much longer. Nan, what do you see?
Well, there's that interesting shape in the sky,
Yeah.
which is not threatening at all, which is welcoming, maybe a figure and anything. But
Casper the
colors
Friendly
are
Ghost?
different, it's calmer up there.
Yeah. So we've got a spot of the sky might be opening, calmer. Yeah. So contrast, right? What's in the sky to what's down below. Where else do you see contrast, guys? You can look at subject, but you can also look at elements of art for contrast.
Well, I think the element in the sky is almost like a chalk line of a detective novel.
Yeah, right. The dead person on the ground.
Yep.
So it itself is kind of threatening. Anyone else on contrast? How else do you see it?
Well, the sky is totally ranges from dark to really bright.
Great. So we've got dark and bright in the skies. Keith says, Cindy, what about you?
Me? The Mount Fujiyama is like such a static thing, and there's so much movement in the waves.
Fantastic. You're after my own heart. So we've got Fuji standing quiet, and the wave is obviously in motion. What else about Fuji and the wave? No one's mentioned this. Contrast, guys. This is easy, right? Size. Fuji, which is far larger, is in the background, as it should be here. But the difference shows us that the wave is what we should be frightened of here. Finally, I'm going to say there's a color contrast too. He's used this creamy color, this yellowy cream against this blue, and we'd be on two different sides of the color wheel here. This is one of the other 36 works that he did in his Mount Fuji series. Obviously, the mood is much different. Any last thoughts about this beautiful piece by Hokusai? And there is a tight shot before we leave of our doomed people. Put yourself on the boat, guys, and well, who knows if you'll make it through.
Oh, I would just say that they're not doing anything, these people, except cowering. They're not rowing. They're not trying to do anything about it. They've given up, seems to me. They're all just cowering in the bottom of these 3 boats.
They've had it. They've given up. Thank you, Mark. Guys, by the way, since you're painters, I'll mention one other thing briefly. This was right about the time that Prussian blue was first created, and we've got it here. He used it repeatedly after this piece, and you can see it's just gorgeous here. And it's knockoff, if you will, of a lighter version of it. That same blue probably mixed with white. And of course, people have had fun with this over the years. This is a piece that you can see, if you haven't already, at the Museum of Fine Arts. It's The Slave Ship by JMW Turner, and it's 1840. And here it is. It's about 5 feet wide, 3.5 feet tall. Now, I'm going to tell you in a minute why he was inspired to do it. But first, I want to force us to look at it a little more carefully, because this requires careful looking. What do you see other than a ship on the left side? What else do you see here? Look all around it. If you've got a cell phone that you're looking this on, I don't know that you're going to be in any luck, but Julie.
Well, you see people drowning. It's a horrible event that's happening.
Thank you, Julie. So are they foreground, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're enslaved. They're being thrown over. I just was there actually the other day.
Oh, you know too much. Yeah, right.
Chains.
Thank you. So someone's screaming chains. We see a chain dangling off a leg. We see chains here as well. And if you look carefully, guys, you're going to see arms and maybe other body parts. What has occurred here is, this is, by the way, inspired by an actual event of 50 years earlier. A ship called the Zong was bringing slaves to the New World. And by the way, Turner was an abolitionist. And at the time he painted this, slavery had been eliminated in England by 8 years, but not in many other parts of the world, of course, including in the US. We're back in 1840. Slave ship Zong met a terrible storm like this one, and the captain had a choice. Keep the slaves on board, and if they died, like his crew, if they died in the storm, his insurance company would pay him nothing. But if he simply threw them overboard, the insurance company would pay. And thus 133 men were thrown overboard that day. Turner was obviously thus inspired. And here we see what's going on. I don't think I have to ask you what else you're seeing here, right? Some very voracious sea creatures, including some things that don't exactly look like fish, or they look like fish that we've never seen before. Look in the top right corner, guys. That's one heck of a big grouper. And here's Julie's hands and, of course, chains as people are going down. Now, someone want to describe what he's doing with color here, because Turner, as many of you know, was a master of color, and he liked to use color to depict things. In other words, sometimes the color was the way that we understood what we were seeing, not his drawing, if you will, or underdrawing of it. What's he doing here with color? Tell me what you love, what you think it achieves, the way he's used color, anything at all. But this is really about color.
I'd be happy to speak on that.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, it goes way back even before the Civil War, to Frederick Edwin Church and the Romanticists, with the fiery sky as a symbol of the State of the Union. So there were a lot of, even in Napoleon's time, the great romantic painters would paint fiery skies to equivocate the disruption, the political disruption that was occurring in the world. So in many ways, that's what it's about.
Thank you very much for pointing out that he is a romanticist, or was a romanticist. And this kind of a scene would be his scene. And also the use of passionate color would be something many romanticists did. Anything else, guys, on color?
Just one more note on this painting.
Go
There
ahead.
were many, he did many versions of this, many, I don't know how many, but there were multiple versions of this painting. The MFA has one of the very best.
Anything more, guys, on color?
Yeah, I would say, if I could,
David. Yep.
the whole image looks like some picture of hell to me. So it's a pretty creepy one with all the hands and the body parts and things, and it looks almost like fire here instead of being something in the sky.
Exactly. David, you want to make a stab at what the weather's all about now? They could be going in, they could be coming out of weather. What's happening there? Can you tell?
Oh, what's happening? Well, yeah, it looks like a storm has happened already. So I guess it looks like we're coming out of a storm.
Okay, it probably is, yes. Cindy?
I was going to say exactly what he said about looking like hell.
Looks like hell,
my
yeah.
first thought, yeah.
Cindy, is it just the people out in front here who are dying, or is there something else about it?
I think the whole color thing.
Yeah, right. We've got
yeah.
If it wasn't Phoenix rising, then it's hell rising, right? We've got red, orange, yellows, golds. It's
like fire almost.
You can feel the burn. Anyone else on color?
Think of newspapers, red, white, and black.
And why do you say that? I'm missing your point.
Those were the only colors available to commercial press.
Got it. I understand.
So since there were only 3 colors, think about in your own painting how much you can do with 3 colors.
And he certainly did. He may have used 5 at most here. Any last thoughts about the slave ship? I want to move on, even though we could talk about it for 10 more minutes. So speaking of, Mark alluded to one of our Hudson River School painters. Here's Alfred Bierstadt. Storm in the Mountains, done in 1870. And I believe this too is at the MFA if you look hard enough to find it. So here, guys, I'm going to play the one-word game once again. Give me one word to describe what you're seeing.
Drama.
Ominous.
So we've got ominous. We've got someone saying drama. Was that Robin?
Yep.
Yep. Victoria, what do you have?
Powerful, threatening.
Powerful, threatening. Anything more, guys?
Weather.
Weather. Yes, there's more weather, right?
I was thinking breathtaking.
Breathtaking. Fantastic. So I'm going to ask you for another word to fill in a sentence. The light is. Fill in the blank for me. The light is.
Moving.
Moving, as in inspirational? Or as in moving left to right or right to left?
As in moving left to right.
Left to right. Great. So light seems to be moving with the weather. Anyone else? Fill in the blank. The light is. Nan.
Hopeful.
Hopeful. So Nan, tell me why you say hopeful. Interesting word.
Well, we have absolute chaos breaking loose in the far distance. We have an area that may be destroyed in the foreground, but we have that beautiful mountain to base our hopes on that is steadfast and unmoving.
Great. So you've actually seen what's easy to miss through the donut hole there. We've got a mountain. I think it was stolen from Bruegel's painting, by the way. It sure looks like it. And that may be the hopeful sign here as the weather passes. Anyone else on a word to describe the light?
I say in the valley.
Now you're looking right down here, right? This golden light.
Yeah.
Isn't it gorgeous? Yeah, exactly. Now, I think he's increased the drama not only with the obvious. I mean, we're seeing weather. That's dramatic. But I think he's used at least one other technique to up the ante with the drama here. and he may be borrowing from a different medium. Anyone want to make a stab at what he's doing?
Well, it's a bit of an illusion, I think, in that the brightness of the yellow is accentuated because of the darkness of the bushes in the foreground, particularly in the right-hand side.
Yep.
And the far mountains, which are underneath the clouds still, those very dark as well.
David, do you think he's taking some artistic license with the yellow?
I've seen some pretty spectacular sun views, so maybe not.
Maybe not. It's hard to know with Bierstadt. As many of you may know, Bierstadt was one of the so-called manifest destiny painters. For the longest time in his career, he wanted to show the great West, and this is clearly the West. Look at the mountain, right? It was the place to go. Go West, young man. Later in his career, he became an environmentalist like so many other of the Hudson School painters. So it's a little bit hard to know what's on his mind right now. Anyone else on how he has upped the ante? David points out this brilliant yellow, and contrasting to what's in the background. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that it is something that so many landscape painters early on in their amateur careers are loath to do. He's cropped it tightly. He's only given us the essence. He's made it essentially a photograph. And just as a candid photo that is cropped tightly makes us see something that is dramatic in the moment by giving us only the guts of this here, he's done that too. I also love the comment about what's through the donut hole. You might want to feel that there's something religious going on here, perhaps. That's unclear, but we do know that the idea of manifest destiny refers to God's plan for Americans to move west. And whether that is at work here or not is hard to know. Any last comment on Storm in the Mountains?
I'd like to say something.
Sure, Laura.
So I see this arch of clouds above, and then I see the dark on that sloping area from the left going down, and the image makes me feel like the eye of God.
Great, thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. The eye of God between these two sloping, I think there's a sloping mountain on the right, and we've got the eye of God, all-knowing, all-seeing. And of course, as someone said, salvation is in the back. Guys, we're going to end today. I was going to end, by the way, here's my comparison for you. It's obvious, right? We've got line and threatening weather. And here too. This is totally coincidence that I had them in my class, these three. I'm going to end with a work that I changed at the last minute. I was going to end with Starry Night, but you've all seen it. And even though we could talk about it in a new way, this is a painting that probably only some of you have seen. And it's in Chicago at the Institute. Gustaf Kalebot painted it in 1876 and 77, an unusual landscape, really a cityscape. And here it is. This is a monumental work. It is 9 feet wide by 7 feet tall. And when you stand in front of it, as I was able to once, it is usually hung a couple of feet off the floor. Therefore, the two people in the front are as tall as you are, and they walk right to you. Now, this is a point in Paris that maybe a few of you would recognize. I do not, even though I've been to Paris many times. But here it is, today. And it looks, gotta love the Parisians, it looks so much the same. The only difference is we've got a wide sidewalk on the left and the cobbles are gone. Other than that, we have the same buildings. Now, this was done just at the end of the time that Baron Eugene Haussmann was Haussmannizing Paris by taking those warren of narrow little streets through neighborhoods that weren't always wonderful and turning them into wide boulevards. And our artist here is reacting to it. Now, I'm going to tell you that this drew the wrath of the Paris Salon when it was first displayed. People thought the craziest things about it. They hated, for one thing, that he would choose in a landscape to give us a dreary day. But I think there's more to it here that's worth mentioning or even unsettling. Guys, take a look at it and tell me what the relationships are between the people here. Find any people you want and tell me what their relationship may or may not be. Do you see some relationships? And I'm not asking that with one answer in mind, guys. You could say anything from yes.
Sharing.
Go ahead, say it again, Mark.
Sharing.
Sharing. Why do you say sharing?
Well, most of the people are in couples or family groups. You even see through the umbrella of the man and woman in the foreground, a small family group in the background.
Okay.
So it's street life. It's it's street life, but that's dominated by family.
Anyone else on the relationships of people here? He is thinking of something. I'm talking about our artist, Kalebot, very specific.
Just a side note, I really like the top hat, which the man in the foreground.
Of course you
is
do,
wearing.
David.
You would.
I chose it when I knew you would be here. Lauren. Go ahead, Lauren. Make sure you unmute.
There are two men under an umbrella on the left, and there are two women under umbrella straight forward, and then there's one man walking by himself straight ahead.
Interesting. So we've got two that, well, clearly have some kind of relationship with each other. A man alone, and maybe the three together, at least artistically, have a relationship. Anyone else on relationships here?
I just would make a comment that couple in the front.
Yep, Barbara.
I think they are a couple. Their attention is taken by something else going on across the street. So they're not talking to each other. They're not sharing a story, but they're looking across the street at a mugging, maybe.
Aha. It's hard to know because they're not reacting very much. They're just looking right now. Yeah?
Yeah.
Guys, if you are like me and some other viewers of this artwork, there's something about it that's just a little bit uncomfortable, disassociating, a little off. Is there anything in particular that strikes you as feeling a bit not quite right? Julie, it's not a trick question, by the way.
Yeah, I see a lot of separation. I think no one's really interacting. Even the people who are couples underneath the umbrella aren't really interacting with each other. And then the whole painting is split in half by the lamppost.
So Julie, you've done two things. First, you've saved my discussion. Yes, what our artist is trying to show, and you can disagree, by the way, guys, if you would like to disagree with Kalebot. He is trying to show what he considered to be the dehumanization of this area in Paris by showing us people, none of whom, even if they are walking together, none of whom are interacting. We see not a soul talking. We see separation between everyone. And he has further done something that our photographer, and I need to get back to my little mouse here, our photographer, forget the Syrah, has done here. The photographer has used a wide angle lens. This is not quite as broad a square as it looks. He has painted in somewhat the same way. He has made it more impersonal than it really was at the time to make a point. He hated the Haussmannization of Paris. Now, Julie's second point is that darn lamppost. Forget a rule of thirds. That thing's smack in the middle, and it certainly isn't something that we want to focus on. But for Julie, it doesn't quite seem right. Anyone else have a thought about anything else in this scene that's just a little bit off? And by the way, Julie, to your point, he's throwing the lamppost there to make us not like this scene. Go ahead, Victoria.
There's very little color. It's very black. Everyone's dreary and no color at all.
It's one thing to have a dreary day, but then to top it off with almost a monochrome palette makes it even drearier. And of course, to Kalebot's point, a sadder scene, if you will. Anyone else on something here that's not quite right?
I don't see the raindrops anywhere on top of the umbrellas. I just see
Right.
the wet cobbles.
Yeah, I'm going to show you the close one again, and you're quite right, Randa. I don't see a raindrop in sight. I'm going to show you a tight shot in a minute. By the way, the reason I keep skipping past this famous painting by Georges Seurat, A Sunday Afternoon on the Isle of Grand Jatte, this is essentially the advent of pointillism. He did this 7 years after Kalebot. Kalebot's not showing him pointillism, but Kalebot is at the edge in 1876, the edge of Impressionism. It's about 10 years old. And he is not a pure Impressionist, but as you're going to see in a second here, you can find the gorgeous use of light on the city street. And we know the Impressionists were in large part about light. And here, of course, it's a dreary day, but look what he's done. Look under the wagon wheels. We all know, intuitively, I hope, that shadows are almost never black. Shadows take on the color of what they are laying on, if you will, but they also take on the color of the item that is casting the shadow. And underneath the wagon wheels, we see a slight hint of the red of the wagon wheels. Look to the right, very subtle shadows under the man and I guess a woman walking away from us. And again, it's not the color of the street, it's not black, it's something that the Impressionists loved. It's a use of light to give us shadow that is not purely black. Now, we've got 1 minute. Does anyone have any last thoughts about Paris, a rainy day? Go ahead, Nan.
It's very heavy on the right side. I mean, it's imbalanced in its weight, and it pulls you right over to this poor guy who's been sliced down in the middle.
Absolutely. So that's one other thing that might make you feel a little uncomfortable here. Out of balance, big hole in the middle, people not looking at each other. And look way, way, way back, guys. If you have a good screen, we even still have a scaffolding up in the background. Haussmannization is not over yet. Now, it really was, but Kalebot is giving us a scaffolding to dig the knife in a little bit deeper here. I know next time you're in Paris, we're all going to try and find this spot. Any last thoughts? Anyone else? You guys have been great. So we're not going to see Starry Night, I'm afraid, because my hour is up. And I'm going to stop right now and make sure I get to see everybody. And Naomi, say thank you to all of you. I know it's not easy to play the participation game when you might not be used to it. You guys did great.